This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. And our subject today is taking it up a notch. So for a do-it-now person, that sort of scares me, because how much more can I do?
Yeah, I like that perspective. So the idea isn't necessarily how much more can you do, it is where do you take it up a notch? And that's been a hard lesson for me to learn myself. A lot of the things we talk about are things I'm working on, that I presume other people are also working on. And it's not like I have the answers, but things are coming together in, like a Polaroid picture, to date
Sure.
myself in terms of that reference. The picture becomes clearer and clearer over time. And I guess my hope is that by the time I'm ready to leave this earth, the picture is clear. I don't have a sense that necessarily it will be crystal clear before that, and I'm okay with that. That's okay. The journey and discovery is what I get excited about. So you had made a comment just briefly about the title, and it made you a little concerned. So can you express that?
Well, when I read this earlier, it says, oh, I just lost it. I'll get back to it. That we're going to revisit and build on prior episodes. And I understand what some of those are, to understand, maybe how we could have done it differently. So maybe not add more to our plate, but what we're doing, do it a little bit more intentionally.
Yeah. So hence the name, everything that interests me seems to come around that topic of being intentional. What is your intention being,
Right.
employing intentionality and so on. And that's what helps drive the brain chemistry in part, and some of the neural pathways that we're forming or that have formed just from past habits and so on. So the idea is, we've talked before about, there's, I think, a book. It's been so long since I first was exposed to this concept, but it's kind of like a pair of shoes that are in the back of the closet that, you liked them and that they were really serviceable and so on, but you kind of forget that you have them, and then you pull them out for whatever reason and think, oh, why haven't I worn these in a while? So it's the same thing with some of these ideas. And the concept is that water doesn't boil unless it reaches 212 degrees. It's hot. It can be, dangerously hot, at 200 degrees or 211 degrees and so on, but it doesn't actually flip into the boil level until it reaches that critical number. And then more recently, I was reading the book that Brian Johnson wrote, Arate, and he was revisiting this. I was reminded of this concept, but he embellished on it, and he said, fire doesn't ignite. The item doesn't ignite until the heat has reached 451 degrees. So at 450, it's on the cusp of turning into fire, but it isn't there yet. And so that kind of stimulated my brain, and as most of these things do. And I thought, okay, so, you and I are people who have many interest endeavors and so on. And we put in as much effort as we can, as a rule. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And sometimes not everything is equal. That we put in some effort on some things and maybe less effort on others.
Right.
But sometimes we put effort into things that one will never ignite or never turn to a boil, that might be important to bring to that level. And sometimes we are attempting to fan the fire and get it to 451 or 212 when it doesn't merit that. So can you think of any things like that in your life?
So many. I've been since my son moved away, I've been wanting to redo his room. And for a couple of reasons. What was that?
Did you tell him?
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah. And I told him right from the beginning, and he keeps saying I won't do it. But I know he's never going to move back home. I mean, that's just a given. And even if he did, he could stay in that room, but I want it to be a room that I can enjoy. And so yesterday I put a lot of energy into that. And because I put so much energy, and I only did a fourth of the room, and it's a very small room, but I was exhausted. But after I did that, when I came back to my desk, my energy level was depleted. And so I couldn't put it into other things. And at the end of the day, I was thinking, what was more important? Doing a fourth of that room and getting it set up the way I wanted? Or should I have put that off some more and done other things? And I realized for yesterday, that was important. It was worth igniting the fire to do that.
Mhm.
But I thought about it all day long. It was in my brain like, why'd you do that? Look at all this other stuff you have to do. But at the end of the day, I realized some of that other stuff I had to do is not all that important. It can get done at another time.
Yeah, and that opens the door to other things we've talked about, the 80-20 rule. So there's the 20% of the vital few things that if we focus on those things, it will produce the 80% of results. But life generally presents us with the 80% of things that aren't going to produce the important results. And, we previously talked in a more recent episode about, in 5 years, what will you make happen that matters more than anything else? In 1 year, what will you make happen that matters more than anything else? And then you bring it back to this week or this day. And, in terms of serving as a North Star, our compass point in terms of what aligns with that and what is the 80%, that's the 20%. What is it I can do today that's relevant to these things that I say are more important than anything else? And then choose our action accordingly. And that's where we would take it up a notch and say that it's aligned with, this bigger, in the context of this bigger objective that I have. And, some people push back and they say, well, do I have to be intentional all the time? I don't want to be intentional
Yeah.
all the time. And, I totally relate. On the weekends, often I'm just like off. All right. I won't answer the phone. I just, I'm off, off, off. So where does that show up for you?
Very little that I'm off. I always find that one project that I really feel I need to do or want to do. I haven't learned 100% the off switch. I will say I'm getting better at it, but my mind, when I'm taking that off time, and I know you like to work in the garden, and I wish I could work in my garden, but I can't get down on my knees. So, but I'll go outside just to like maybe pull some weeds and stuff. But my mind is thinking, is this really necessary, or should I be writing another blog? Should I be calling, a guest? Should I be going out and doing a presentation? And so I'm not really enjoying that downtime because my brain is just going a mile a minute.
Yeah, and I think that illustrates the point, because I certainly have those experiences myself. Constantly like checking in on ourselves, rethinking, doubting ourselves about, what should I be doing? Sometimes it's just self-soothing time. We just need it. I think I mentioned when we were moving our office around COVID, although we had been scanning for years, we didn't have everything scanned. And then we had this big, heavy duty scanner at the office that we all shared. And I didn't want to have to be like feeding smaller batches into my, home office scanner.
Right.
So we were frantic to get it done, but I was finding myself at the scanner, like I shouldn't be scanning. I needed to be taking care of other things. And then I realized, oh, I was just like having stress kind of welling up in me. And this was my self-soothing activity, as if I was kind of patting myself on the arms, saying, they're there now, like, calm down,
Yeah.
calm down. And then I would go back to, the other stuff that I could concentrate on. So, this topic today really in my mind, I can see the connections to so many other things that we've talked about with the tiny steps habit formation thing,
Right.
BJ Fogg, because the idea is where's that tipping point on the action that in the context, it doesn't mean every day has to be driven. You know, that word is, a lot of people call me driven, and I'm not driven. I'm just intentional. And I've always been clear about that distinction. But where can we choose to apply our intention, attention, and intention with just one more degree of effort that's going to produce a bigger return for our time? But in the context of what matters more than anything else. In that longer range time frame, the 5 year, 1 year, this quarter, this month, this week. So what stands out for you, if you want to share it?
Yeah. Well, actually, getting this room set up, because it's been almost 2 years. Okay. And it became a room where we just put all the extra stuff in there.
Yes, I know that room.
Yeah.
Not in your house, but in my house.
And it's bad enough that we have all this extra stuff here in the office studio. So it was like, I just need a room where I can just go sit and it's pleasant, and it's comfortable. And if everybody can consider the fact that this was my adult son's room from the time he was in high school to the time he moved away in his early 30s, there's a combination of toys, adult stuff, whatever. And when he left a lot of it behind. And so initially I started boxing things up. But where did the boxes end up? In that room. Extra clothes that my husband and I had that we weren't ready to give away, where did they go? Into that room. And it finally got to the point that it almost looked like I was hoarding. And I didn't want to open up the door. So that to me was important, because it's something that I want to have for me, so that when I want to leave my office, I have a place where I can go listen to music. I can go read. I can sit in a comfortable chair. And to me, that's the most important. And that's so intentionally, I went in there to do that yesterday. But I also knew that I could only focus on a small part, because if I tried to focus on the whole thing, I would have walked out of the room.
So it sounds like your house is like many houses. There's the public space, so to speak, that the family shares, and then
Right.
there's the bedrooms, and so on. This happened to be your son's bedroom, room, where he had his personal space and so on. And then you have the room that you share with your husband in terms of an office, correct?
Right, exactly.
I remember from prior conversations.
Yep.
And so you want something that's neither public space nor office.
Right. And my
Okay.
husband doesn't need that. I mean, he has voiced that opinion for a long time. Okay. He doesn't care if anybody's, around. If he's sitting in the living room or in the kitchen or wherever, that's where he is. But he knows that I need to pull away occasionally. And so that's why we decided that this room could be mine. And I've been talking about it for almost the 2 years.
So these are some of the reasons why it's important, it matters.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so you put in some time and so on, and some people might interpret the episode today to be talking about, well, getting it all done in one day or one weekend and so on.
Right.
Marie Kondo thing, which, I've seen videos on it. And it's like, no way, all those things would still be out. I wouldn't have enough time to get it all remedied. So, so the idea is to decide ahead of time, the tiny steps thing from BJ Fogg in terms of tiny steps towards habits. You can be looking at it in terms of why are these things here? How did they get here? Because, I think we all have those spaces
Right.
in our cars, our houses, you know, maybe some people have storage units where we're not ready to let go, but we don't have space for it, or we don't want it underfoot in the house. And, you know, you like me have, or me like you have that back bedroom that's the catch-all for things. And then if I were to have a guest, you know, I have to find some other place to put things.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So knowing that and knowing the effort you put in, so you have that more recent experience, is this something that is worth just 1 degree more effort? And I'm not saying it should, so I don't want you to think you have to answer that way. This is in the top 20% of things that if you got this done, it would reap you 80% more X. What would the X be?
Coming back into the office and setting up upcoming shows. So that would be the next thing on my list that I would need to do or want to do.
So setting it up in that room or in?
No. Oh, you mean continuing in that room? Is that what you're asking? Oh, so I probably only have maybe 15% of the room done. So I know I have a lot more to do, but I've also, in my head, I sort of know where the next 10 or 15% of my time will be spent.
Okay.
Now I can't tell you when that's going to be, because I've waited this long. Who knows? But there are certain things in that room that I actually have to sort through to say, am I keeping? Am I getting rid of? And that's the hard part for me right now because it's not all my stuff. It belongs to my husband and my son.
All right. So how does the concept of the 1%, just 1 degree of effort that's going to give you a return, play in here? It doesn't mean cleaning the room necessarily. It may be something else related to that.
Well, to me, it's just, you know, I have made the effort and that's where it comes in. It's like, while I was doing it, I kept thinking I should be doing other things. This didn't have to be done. But once it was done, I felt really, really good. And I was eager to do what else was on my plate outside of that room.
Yeah, so what stands out for me then is a way to look at it is the 1% was, you know, you started that took it to, you know, either close to the boiling point or the boiling point. Or another way is to then intentionally, you know, earmark some time that if you had the energy, because you've got other things going on and so on, that would be your landing place to do it. So I try to allocate my household chores and errands and, you know, puttering in the garden and those things to the weekends, because I can't get them done during the week.
Sure.
And so it's something for me to look forward to, even though it does require effort. And, you know, I don't have the stamina I used to have when I first, you know, bought the house. I was out there pulling out, you know, every invasive plant in the world was in this, you know, little urban backyard. And they still pop up from time to time. So, so it might be the 1% might be just getting a time allocated on a recurring time frame on your calendar on the weekend where you get to choose what you're going to insert in that. And it may be that room. It may be not.
Yeah. On the weekend, I definitely will not do that room. And the reason being is when my husband's around, he knows that room is necessary, but it bothers him if I take the time away to do that room. I could be sitting in the office doing work. He's okay with that. There's something about that room. It's like, how necessary. And the other day, he even said to me before I started, well, there's a chair in there. You can go sit and read in there. And I said,
I'll leave the door open.
Yeah. I opened the door and I said to him, look at this. And he goes, well, just move those over there. And it's like,
every job needs a supervisor.
Right. And yeah, exactly. But I said to him, it needs to feel comfortable to me. And I said, look at the rest of the house. And he said, yeah, I know everything has to be put away. Well, if I can, yeah, everything is put away. You know, it's one thing in the office. I realize it will never be my um, neat room because I share it.
Mhm.
My husband's a pack rat. So, you know, I stare at my screen and I work and I don't have to look at the rest of the room.
Mhm. Mhm.
Another room is my comfort zone. And
And you
um,
want it to be visually
yes, yeah,
zen.
I want to feel proud that if, you know, somebody came over, I could keep the door open and I wouldn't feel like, you know, I'm living, you know, in a hoarder's room because that does not make me feel comfortable.
There was a secretary that worked in an office that I worked in, and she said her solution when people dropped in and she was maybe challenged by them seeing the house is she would pull the vacuum out and leave it in the open and make it look like she was in the middle of cleaning.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
why it looked that way. And I think of that from time to time.
That's funny. You know, I will say, you know, I'm very organized on my desk. And when it gets disorganized, I have to stop what I'm doing to clean it off. Um, and this is going to sound funny to our listeners, but I know they can't see my desk. But because I'm sitting here talking to them, I th- I believe that they can see it, and I don't want them to see a mess.
Yeah, and you know, it does impact. I mean, there's visual clutter, and there's that open loop concept. When the brain sees something, it kind of is looking for patterns, and it's busy. And
Yeah,
in order to get stuff done in a very impactful, intentional way, we have to kind of corral it so that we can get that 1% more return on our time and intention effort. So it's not that we have to do more. It's just that, we can be really choosy about what we're investing our focus on, and in that way get more of what we're seeking. And in your case, it's, visual calm and peace so that, it can give you all those other derivative benefits and so on from it.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what's the one thing that you would suggest that anybody listening might take away, that you might take away, or that they might take away from the conversation?
I think it means, at least to me, is to become aware of what is truly important. You know, if clutter doesn't bother you, then that's not the important thing to focus on. It's what makes you the most comfortable and um, productive as you want to be each day. And some of those days, I'll be real honest. I get up early with my husband, and you can see me if you had a camera here, you could see me washing my kitchen floor at 5 o'clock in the morning, only because that is important to me. I
Mhm,
want my
mhm.
floor to be clean. Okay. And nobody's going to see it other than me and my husband, probably. But I can move forward in the rest of my day knowing that, hey, I accomplished this because it was important to me.
Exactly. Perfect. Love it. Well, it'll be interesting to hear what happens to that room.
Yeah, it it's going to be done before I leave for Texas in June, so that when I come back from his cluttered apartment, I'll have a nice place to go sit and relax. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great, great, great.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All
Take
right.
care
Thank
now.
you, Karen.
Bye bye.